Welcome to Plymouth 400 Conversations. I'm Michele Pecoraro, and I'll be your host for this episode. The 400th commemoration of our nation has inspired a body of creative work, poetry, film, literature, and art. The series will explore several of these projects and how they contribute to the historic, educational, and cultural legacies of the Plymouth 400 commemoration. In this episode, we will be speaking to two creators whose ideas are captured in books. One is an activity book based on a scavenger hunt, complete with an app, a blog, and a cute mascot. The second is a beautifully photographed collection of vintage photos and new photography expressing the historic beauty and relevance of the Plymouth, Massachusetts waterfront and other areas of Plymouth, Massachusetts. So first, I'd like to introduce Barbara Tibbetts, creator of the Lookbook series. Barbara, welcome to Plymouth 400 Conversations.
Thank you, Michele. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you for joining me. So Barbara, you have been an educator and a mom, and now a creator of the Lookbook. Tell me about that progression and the inspiration for the first book and the eventual series.
Well, I guess it started when I was a kindergarten teacher before I had children. But then when my children came along, as a parent, of course, mom, you want to do the best you can to educate your children. And the brownie trip was my responsibility when my daughter was about 8 years old. And we were not campers. So we decided to take a trip to the island of Nantucket. And being an educator, I wanted to teach the girls about the island. And being a kindergarten teacher, I wanted it to be fun. So I created this little black and white booklet, literally on my printer at home, and gave the girls each a copy and a pencil so they could record when they saw the different items that I had in the book. And after that weekend, I started thinking about how well all the girls and the moms got along, which, you know, a lot of women in there, it makes it for a tricky weekend. But everyone really enjoyed themselves, and I realized it's because the girls were occupied. They weren't pulling at the mom's sleeve, so the moms enjoyed the weekend too. And I set about creating a book. My first book was in Nantucket, and then I have since then grown the series, mostly close to home at first as my children grew. And then as my children have grown, I have done books now spreading across the US.
That's incredible. So you have to have a process after that first book for preparing and assembling an activity book like this. How did that lead to the many books in the series, and how did you determine what locations you would choose?
The locations began based on my kids and how far I could travel. And so I did Battle Road and Freedom Trail because I lived in Acton, Massachusetts at the time. And so I was able to get to those easily. And then it expanded to Washington, D.C., where my son went to college. And the process that I would use to create the books is I'd really start with Google, or a book about the location, and I'd gather information, and then I'd go spend a day in the location, sort of just walking around, getting a feel for it. And then I would spend another day or two photographing it, and then come home and do more research and then put the book together. And I also took a 6-week road trip with my daughter about 2 years ago, prior to this wonderful time we're living in now. And many of the locations that are spreading across the US came from that trip. So it's all been, work-life balance for sure.
Good that you got that trip in pre-COVID-19 so that you can have the series to work on during COVID-19.
Exactly. And that's where the app came in as well.
Oh, that's wonderful. So we're going to talk about the app in a minute. You prepared the Plymouth Colony, Massachusetts book to release in time for the 400th anniversary. In light of the past year's challenges, families are now looking for things to do. How can the lookbook be utilized for people during this time that we're in?
Oh my goodness, it is perfect for families because we found that although we designed it for 4 to 14, we found that the whole family gets involved. So it goes from their stickers in the book. So the younger kids enjoy the stickers and the older kids enjoy exploring the area. So it can be a whole family activity, but it's a safe family activity. So you're basically kind of walking around outside And so therefore you're safe, you can keep your distance from people, but yet you're exploring and looking and learning about the area.
And isn't there a possibility that there are quizzes, right? That kids could, even if they never could come here, they could take it home?
Yes, we're working that's actually part of the app is a history quiz, and we are onboarding books now. During COVID, we started it, and it's a process,
Yeah.
but we are definitely onboarding the books and excited because yes, you can use the history quiz at home. It's an augmented reality history quiz app, which brings our mascot Hunter the Owl to life, which I see Hunter sitting behind you
Well,
as he is.
yes, I wanted to talk about Hunter. Oh, he's over here. He's over here. Hunter the Owl, who is our little, there we go. There he is.
There's
And he
Hunter.
has our little t-shirt on. Thank you very much for that. And he has become quite an icon for you. He's come a long way from the prototype, and then came the blog and the app, or the app and the blog. How do you see this educational series evolving in the future?
Well, one of the things that we love about it and bringing the app in is that we've got the book and technology pulling together. And that's really important right now for families because we need technology. Even if we feel our kids are on the screens a lot right now, they still desire it and need it because it's part of our world. And so we have the book, which allows for a tactile experience and pictures, and then we have the app, which brings the technology in and brings Hunter to life in animation through augmented reality, which is really, really fun to have seen him evolve and literally come to life and have a voice and share these history quiz. Not only is there a quiz in the app, but there's also facts about the specific location that you're visiting as well, or will visit, because it can be used prior to visiting as well.
Right. It can give you a kind of a roadmap of what you're going to do when you go to one of these places that the books represent.
Exactly. Yes.
So that's really exciting. Tell me a little bit about your blog and how that is evolving. I know you're not, again, this is kind of new.
Right. I'm not really a quote unquote blogger, but I do feel I have things to say and contribute to families and information about what history events are happening, or just, an idea of how can you play with this material a little bit and get out and enjoy the area that you may live near or may want to visit in the future. And so the blog sort of pulls all of that in together. My educational background as a kindergarten teacher as well as an author.
So you are no longer an educator as a profession, but I know I was an educator once too, and I always feel like I use that every single day. How did you use the fact that you were an educator and what you learned every single day?
Well, to do with my business, I definitely use my background in education with children to think, what would they like to see? What would they like to do? What would interest them? For sure, I definitely do that as an educator. I think as a mom, we're always educating our children, and I still have a couple children home due to COVID, and so so I'm still a mom, and I'm learning. I think educators love to learn, and each time I do a book, I love learning about the place. And one of the things that I really enjoy about the books is when I was younger, I've been asked this question, did you like history? Because my books are now based on history. And no, I didn't. I did not like history. And one of the reasons I didn't like it is because it was dates and memorizing names, and there was no connection to what really was happening in history. And so what I've been able to do in the books is when I go and explore a place, I'm able to learn more about the history and not have to memorize the dates and the people, but totally immerse myself. And that's what the books do. They immerse you in the location that you're visiting, specifically Plymouth and Plymouth Colony, which spreads all the way to Martha's Vineyard.
Right. And so the Plymouth Colony book differs a little bit from your regular Plymouth, Massachusetts book in that it does cover other locations on Cape Cod, in Martha's Vineyard, correct?
Correct. And it was wonderful working with you and Plymouth 400 to find all the understanding of how it all came together. It wasn't just Plymouth. It was a part of the Cape, and it was Martha's Vineyard, and so I learned quite a bit about that. And people might not know that when you think of it's just Plymouth and we think of Plymouth Rock, right? But it's actually a lot more than that. And the book takes you on that adventure and shows you where you should go and what you should see.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Now, we have about 2 minutes left. Is there anything that I haven't asked you or we haven't covered that you might like to comment on about your journey with this project and these books and our little friend here?
And Hunter, it's definitely been a journey. That
Yeah.
is for sure, but a very fun one. Like I said, I really enjoy learning about the areas that the books have been produced in, and I've definitely learned to how to publish a book. I've learned how to write a book, learned to publish a book, and I've really enjoyed the people that I've met along the way, and especially when I visited you in Plymouth and learned all about the anniversary. And hopefully people will still get out and see more about Plymouth at 400 and learn more about it. Just because we had a little interruption doesn't mean that the learning stops. The learning definitely continues, and it's a really wonderful story that we need to remember. And the lookbook is a really fun way to do it, to explore.
It really is. And the whole idea of a scavenger hunt, that is so, it's something that now you're using it as a technological piece, but a scavenger hunt is a kind of a great old way to bring people to a place or to a moment in history. So thank you for everything that you have done. And thank you so much for your passion about not just your book, the lookbook in general, but about Plymouth and Plymouth Colony. I really, really appreciate you being here with us today, Barbara. And we are running low on time, but I just wanted to say thank you so much for joining us.
And thank you, Michelle. This has been a great journey and a lot of fun with you. And I wish everybody safe and healthy lives going forward.
Well, thank you. And we wish the same for you and your family. Barbara, thank you for being with me on Plymouth 400 Conversations, and we will be right back. Our second guest is a photographer by trade with an eye for beauty and a curiosity for history. A lifelong Plymouth resident, Dan Rapoza has curated and photographed scenes of Plymouth past and present in a collectible book called Plymouth Then and Now. Hi, Dan, and thanks for being here on Plymouth 400 Conversations.
How are you? Thank you for having me.
Oh, we're happy to have you. So, Dan, you are, as I said, a photographer by trade. When did you first pick up a camera, and when did you first think, I think I'm going to be a photographer? What inspired you?
Well, I remember when I was little, my parents used to subscribe to National Geographic, and obviously all the photos in National Geographic are like stunning, once in a lifetime captures. So I was always just mesmerized by the nature shots, the storm shots and all that stuff. So I remember in, I think, 3rd grade, I just asked my mom for a camera for my birthday, and I got it and was off and running, just shooting whatever I could shoot, animals, sunsets, thunderstorms and all that stuff. And we'd have to ship off the film, and it would come back a week and a half later, and it was like Christmas, every time the pictures would show up in the mailbox. And I would start making photo albums with different things, like, storms here and family in this album and this and that. And yeah, I just became really obsessed with it early on, and it just kept going and going and going. And eventually, when I got out of high school, I got my own semi-professional camera and was doing the same thing, and started shooting bands and started kind of getting recognized and giving out my phone number to different bands, and the work started to come in.
That's incredible. And so it was kind of a natural progression. And how wonderful was National Geographic? They were the gold standard.
Yeah.
I remember, just
Yeah.
waiting for that thing to come to the house.
Yeah, I loved it. We had stacks and stacks of them. Just
Yep. And,
Love-
and everybody saved them forever.
yeah. Well, I don't know where they are now, but
Yeah.
they were in my house for a long time.
Yeah, same here. So Plymouth, Dan, is an iconic New England town, which you know because you grew up here, and it has a very well-known history. You are a native Plymouthian, and your childhood in Plymouth must have shaped your photographer's eye in some way. Can you talk a little bit about you and Plymouth and what your favorite places to photograph might be?
Well, as far as the then and now aspect of it, my grandmother used to cut out, Maggie Mills used to do this article in the Old Colony a long time ago, and it pretty much was a then and now, but the nows were 1950s, 1960s, and the thens were still the 1800s, but she would cut them out, and same thing I did with my photos. She would put them in a, like a photo album with the sticky back tape, and they'd always be out on the table when I'd go visit her, and I was just mesmerized, looking at the before and afters. And as a little kid, I'm like, oh, I know where that is. That's Rich's, or that's Purity Supreme, or so that always grabbed my attention. I always loved it. And then, when those free calendars would come in the mail with those old photos of Plymouth that we see all over the place, I just got the idea. It was never really intended to be a book, but I was like, you know what? This is right down the street. This is the Jenny Gristmill. This is Water Street. This is Leiden Street. And just started taking pictures and lining things up, where that photographer was, and started kind of making my own, then and now kind of scrapbook thing. And I started putting it on Facebook, and, got a lot. It was well received. So I kind of just kept rolling with it,
Right. Well, technology, Facebook and social media has definitely changed the way we see the world. So I'm sure that other people seeing those then and now photos must have commented.
Well, yeah, I mean, I put a couple up, and people like, oh, you should make a calendar. I'm like, well, all right, then that means I got to do 12. But 12 was easy. And then, I kept posting them, and then got up into the teens and the 20s, and people were like, you should make a book. So I was like, all right, now that's going to be work. But, so I didn't want to put out a 23-page book. I wanted a good, solid 100 location book, so it took me a couple years to get all the locations and nail them down. But eventually it, transformed into a book, which is awesome. Never expected it, but I'm glad it happened that way.
Yeah, you never expected to author a book.
No.
And yet here you are.
No, I owe a lot of it to Facebook. I mean, the response was cool, and the fact that other people shared the same interest in the whole then and now concept, I was like, all right, I think we're all in on this. Let me keep going. So
yeah. And the book is here right behind me, so people can see the cover. Yeah, and you have it too. So in the book, you actually analyze these old photographs and shoot that location now in the 21st century. What do you look for in these vintage photos that make some scenes stand out to you in your creative process, and why, if you couldn't, locate that scene again, how did that determine what you would use and what you wouldn't use?
Well, a lot of the, most of the book, they're very, very easy. 90% of this book is like within a quarter mile of Plymouth Rock. So Water Street is obvious. The Leiden Street is obvious, down the Jenny Gristmill. But there were some other ones, obviously, where churches were torn down for the post office, and, old homes were torn down. But there's always some point of reference, whether it's an existing house, whether it's a chimney, a rooftop, a stone wall, an ocean view or something that made me say, okay, this is definitely spot on. This is the shot. And as far as the second question, I'm a perfectionist in a sense.
Good.
So if it didn't line up 100%, I wouldn't put it in the book. Like one example was Jordan Hospital. Like the old hospital was in the photo, but around it's just all fields. But I couldn't physically get my body where the photographer was in the 1800s because he was standing where the new Jordan Hospital was, so that my vantage point couldn't be the same. So if I couldn't line it up 100%, or if there was any question or doubt, I just kept it out of the book. You know, I just,
Wow.
yeah. So it had to be spot on.
So you actually stood, whenever you recreated the old photo, you actually stood in the footsteps of where some photographer that you probably don't know stood in the 1800s. What did that feel like?
It was cool because you walk down Main Street every day running errands without giving a second thought, you know, you just thought about your daily business, you know, but when you're on the corner of Main Street and Water Street, you know, looking north, and you're right where this guy or girl was in 1890, when it was just all horse and buggy, you know, dirt roads, you kind of just step back and say like, wow, I mean, this is pretty cool. The scenery's changed, but I'm like right where that guy was. And you kind of take it in. I mean, being in this town 43 years, you just kind of not take it for granted, but you see it every day. So when you actually kind of just stop and look around, and you know, it's almost like a time machine, you know, it's kind of cool.
Yeah, I find that just walking around Plymouth without having the benefit of looking at it from the you know, the old perspective, but we do kind of walk by a lot of really important places as we walk around and do our business here in Plymouth. So you're right, it is quite a journey, and then to have that 1800s photo, you know, that you know in your head and you've got in front of you, and then try to take that picture again. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Did you have any discoveries or revelations? We have a few minutes left. So in this few minutes, if there were any discoveries or, you know, things that you just didn't think you would benefit from, you know, in creating this book, or things you didn't know about?
I kind of lost you in that question.
Okay, let me do it again. So,
no, a little memo popped up at the bottom of the screen, and I kind of just lost focus.
That's okay. That's okay. So, were there any real discoveries or revelations that you know, can honestly say, I never thought it would affect me this way?
Well, no, not so much that way, but I'm really surprised on how much of this town hasn't changed, but how much has. Like where the skate park is now, all the mills that used to be in there. I had no idea in that little area how many little mills were down there. And then, you know, Coles Hill, I always figured Coles Hill was just a straight shot from the water up to Burial Hill. I never knew that there were homes all along Coles Hill, on both sides of Water Street. You know, a lot of the buildings and hotels that are now the old Papa Gino's, or, you know, gift shops, they were like really nice hotels and, you know, stuff like that. So it's amazing what's unchanged, but I was really amazed on what has changed, what's been torn down, what's been shaped by man. You know, Town Brook, I just figured that was always Town Brook, but obviously it was, you know, a big pond back in the day, and it's been shaped, you know, by man. And, you know, so it's nice to see both what's transitioned over the last, you know, 400 years. Well, yeah. And what hasn't, you know, what we preserved and what we changed. So it's cool. It was really, really fun to do the book and to look at it for the first time in print, you know, and not on a computer screen doing all the editing and all that. really rewarding. It was a fun project.
Wow, Dan, really congratulations on the book, and thank you so much for being here with me on Plymouth 400 Conversations today.
Definitely thank you for having me. It was an honor.
Thanks very much. So thank you for joining us for Plymouth 400 Conversations. Special thanks to our sponsors and guests who have made this series possible. And special thanks to our partners at PAC TV and the Center for Active Living in Plymouth. For more information about these books and how to view past episodes, please visit our website at plymouth400inc.org. Until next time, go make some history.